Hello, I'm really glad you're here tonight. This hour is different from the rest of the day. It doesn't ask you to decide anything. It doesn't ask you to perform or explain or keep up. It simply invites you to lie still and let your thoughts move at their own pace. As the years pass, nighttime becomes a kind of companion, a place where the mind is free to wander without interruption, where memories return, not urgently, but patiently, where understanding settles in quietly, without needing words. Later in life, the mind doesn't race the way it once did. It reflects, it revisits, it connects dots that once seemed unrelated. And it does this most honestly when the lights are off and the world has gone silent. This space is for those thoughts, the ones that don't surface during the day, the ones that arrive only when you're alone with yourself, resting, remembering, and gently making sense of a long, lived-in life. So take a slow breath, let your body soften into the bed, and allow this night to meet you where you are. And now, before we begin, if this kind of honest, gentle reflection speaks to you, take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. And down in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is where you are right now. There's something comforting about knowing we're all here together, scattered across time zones, but united in these late hours when the world finally grows still. So settle in. Adjust your pillows, find a comfortable position, and know that for the next hour, you're not alone in whatever wisdom you're carrying, whatever understanding you've earned, whatever truths rise to the surface when the lights go out. Let's begin. You're lying still right now. The day is finished. Whatever it asked of you, you gave it. Whatever it took from you, it's taken. And now there's nothing left to do but this. Simply be here. Simply breathe. Simply allow the quiet to settle around you like a blanket pulled up slowly, gently, without urgency. And in this quiet, something begins to happen. Something that only happens at night, only in this particular stillness. Only when the demands of the world have finally released their grip on your attention. Your mind begins to take inventory, not the anxious kind of inventory, the kind that lists what went wrong and what still needs fixing. No, this is a different kind entirely. This is the slow, unhurried kind, the kind that only becomes possible after decades of living, the kind that looks at a life, your life, and begins to take account of everything it contains. You have lived a full life. You may not always feel that way. Some nights the regrets surface louder than the gratitudes. Some nights the losses seem to outweigh the gains. Some nights the person you intended to become feels further away than the person you actually are. But tonight, in this quiet, you're going to take a real inventory, not a performance of gratitude, not a forced counting of blessings, a real, honest, unhurried accounting of everything this life of yours actually contains. Because it contains more than you remember on ordinary days. It contains more than you give yourself credit for. It contains entire worlds of experience that have shaped you into the person lying in this bed right now. And that person deserves to be seen clearly, deserves to be known honestly, deserves to lie still and feel the full weight of everything they've lived through, everything they've loved, everything they've survived, and everything they've quietly become. So let's begin the inventory. Let's open the ledger of your life and read it slowly, together, in the dark. Start with the earliest entries, the ones written in a hand so young and uncertain that you can barely recognize it as yours. You were a child once, completely and utterly a child, small enough that the world seemed enormous, young enough that everything was still possible, innocent enough that certain kinds of pain hadn't yet found you. Think about where you grew up, the particular geography of your childhood, the streets you knew by heart, the houses you could identify without looking, the shortcuts only the neighborhood children knew, the smells that belonged to that place and no other, the way the light fell on familiar things at different hours of the day. That place made you, not entirely, not in ways you could have chosen, but it made you in ways you're still discovering. The sounds you find comforting now trace back to that place. The foods that feel like home trace back to the kitchens you grew up around. The landscapes you're drawn to echo the geography that first taught you what the world looked like. You carry that place with you everywhere you go, even if you left it gratefully, deliberately, without looking back. It's still inside you, layered into your understanding of what safety feels like, what belonging feels like, what home, in its deepest sense, actually means. Think about the people who were there, the ones who formed the original cast of your life. Your parents, however they were, however complicated, however loving, however absent, however present. They were the first people you ever knew, the first faces that registered as familiar, the first voices that meant safety or tension or warmth or warning. You understood things about them that you didn't have words for as a child. You read the room before you knew that was a skill. You understood the mood of your household the way a sailor reads weather, by instinct, by constant quiet observation, by necessity. Whatever your parents gave you, they gave you first. Their love, or their limitations, or their silence, or their noise, their warmth, or their coldness, or their complicated mixture of both. They were your first teachers, whether they knew it or not, whether they were good at it or not. They handed you your first ideas about what people are like, what you could expect from the world, whether it was safe to trust, whether love was steady or conditional, whether you were someone worth taking care of. Those early lessons went deep, deeper than you probably realize even now. They shaped the choices you made decades later, the relationships you sought out, the patterns you repeated without understanding why, the things you worked your whole life to heal. Take a quiet moment now to acknowledge your childhood, not to judge it, not to grieve it or idealize it, just to acknowledge it. It happened. It was real. It shaped you, and you have carried it forward into every room you've ever walked into since. Now move forward a little, into the years when you began to form your own understanding of who you were. You had a self that was distinctly yours even before you had words for it. Preferences that were genuine, interests that lit something inside you that other things didn't. Moments of real happiness that had nothing to do with performance or approval. Moments when you were simply quietly, completely yourself. What were those moments? What were the things that made you feel most alive when you were young? Before the world got its hands on you and tried to shape you into something more useful, more appropriate, more acceptable. Maybe it was being outdoors, the particular freedom of an open field or a stretch of woods or the edge of a body of water. The feeling of being small against something large and natural and indifferent. The way that indifference was actually its own kind of comfort. The world didn't need anything from you when you stood in it like that. You could just be there. Maybe it was something you made with your hands, something you built or drew or wrote or cooked or crafted. The satisfaction of taking raw materials and making them into something that hadn't existed before, something that came from inside you and became real in the world. That feeling of creation, of agency, of evidence that you were here and that your presence left a mark. Maybe it was music, the way certain songs reached inside you and touched things that had no other access point. The way melody could make you feel things you didn't have words for. The way rhythm organized the world into something bearable. Music found you early, if it was going to find you at all. And if it did, it never really let go. Maybe it was books, the discovery that other lives existed inside those pages, that you could slip out of your own experience and inhabit another one entirely, that the world was larger than your street, your town, your family's particular version of reality, that other people had felt exactly what you felt, even though they lived in completely different times and places, that you were not alone in ways you hadn't even known you needed to not be alone. Whatever it was that made you feel most alive as a young person, that thing was real. It was an early piece of self-knowledge, a signal from your own interior about who you actually were underneath all the roles and expectations and requirements that life was already beginning to stack on top of you. That signal never goes entirely silent. Even now, lying here in the dark, you can feel it. The version of you that existed before the world fully shaped you is still present, still alive, still yours. The inventory includes that person, the one who loved what they loved before being told whether it was appropriate to love it. Move forward again, into the years of becoming. The years when everything was stakes and uncertainty, and the terrifying, exhilarating business of figuring out how to live. You made choices during those years. Some of them were good. Some of them were mistakes. Most of them were both simultaneously, depending on which angle you examine them from. You chose work, or work chose you, which amounts to the same thing in the end. You spent a significant portion of your waking life doing something to sustain yourself and your people. You showed up, day after day, year after year. You gave your time and your skill and your attention to something larger than yourself, whether it deserved that devotion or not. Think about the work you've done over the course of your life, the early jobs that were just survival, the learning curve of figuring out what you are actually capable of, the moments of unexpected competence, the satisfaction of doing something well, really well, the kind of well that you could feel in your body, the kind of well that no one had to tell you about because you already knew. Think about the colleagues who became friends, the ones you shared lunches with, complained with, celebrated with, the ones who understood the particular texture of your professional life because they were living it alongside you. Some of them you've lost track of. Some of them are still in your life. Some of them are gone in the permanent sense. But they were real. They mattered. The inventory includes them. Think about what you built through your work, not just products or outcomes or deliverables, but the intangible things, the trust you earned, the reputation you maintained, the younger people you helped find their footing, the times you used whatever authority or knowledge you had to make something genuinely better. Those things don't disappear. They ripple outward into the world in ways you'll never fully trace. You loved people. This is one of the most important entries in the entire inventory. You opened yourself to other human beings. You took the risk again and again of caring, of wanting, of needing, of allowing yourself to be known by someone else and to know them in return. This is not a small thing. This is one of the most courageous things a person can do, and you did it. Probably more times than you remember. Think about the people you've loved. Not just romantically, though that too, but the full range. The friendships that were genuine and deep. The family members you chose to stay close to even when blood alone wasn't enough reason. The people who arrived at exactly the right moment and changed the entire direction of something. The people who made ordinary days feel meaningful simply by being in them. You had friendships that were the real thing, the kind where you could be honest, where you didn't have to perform or manage your image, where you could show up tired or confused or frightened and be met without judgment, where the other person's happiness genuinely mattered to you as much as your own, where you built something together over years and decades that has no name, but that both of you understood completely. Some of those friendships are still intact. Some have faded through distance or time, or the natural divergence of lives moving in different directions. Some ended in ways that still carry a residue of grief or confusion or unresolved feeling. But all of them were real. All of them left their mark. You are who you are partly because of the specific people who loved you and let you love them back. And the romantic loves, the ones that opened you up in ways nothing else could. The first time someone looked at you with that particular attention and you understood, perhaps for the first time, that you were worth looking at, that you were interesting, that you were desirable, that you mattered to another specific person in a way that felt different from every other kind of mattering. You gave yourself to people in that way. You took the risk. You made yourself vulnerable. You allowed someone else the power to hurt you because the alternative, the closed-off, protected, armored alternative, felt worse than the risk. Sometimes you got hurt, sometimes badly. Sometimes in ways that took years to understand and longer to heal, and still you tried again. Still you opened again. Still you chose love over self-protection again and again, because somewhere inside you, you understood that this was what life was actually for. That courage belongs in the inventory, right at the center of it. You became someone's person, maybe a partner's, maybe a parent's, maybe a friend's, maybe all of these. But at some point, you became indispensable to someone in a way that changed your understanding of yourself entirely. Think about the people for whom you have been the constant. The ones who, when something happened, good or bad, thought of you first. The ones who trusted you with their fear. The ones who called you when the world fell apart. The ones who wanted you specifically in the room when something important was happening. You were that person for someone. Maybe for many someones, this is not nothing. This is not incidental. This is a central fact of your life that deserves to be seen and named and acknowledged in the quiet of this night. You showed up. When it mattered, when it was inconvenient, when you were tired or scared yourself, you showed up for the people who needed you. You made sacrifices that were real sacrifices. Not the comfortable kind that feel like virtue, but the hard kind that cost you something. Time, sleep, money, ease. Your own needs placed behind someone else's for a season or a decade or a lifetime. You did this willingly for the most part, because they mattered to you, because their well-being was genuinely bound up with yours. Because love, real love, doesn't ask whether it's convenient. It simply moves toward the person who needs it. The inventory holds all of this. Every act of quiet service, every moment you put yourself aside, every night you stayed up worried about someone you loved, every morning you got up and kept going because they needed you to. All of it counts. All of it is real. All of it is part of the accounting of a full life. You changed. This is one of the most significant items in the inventory, and one of the hardest to see clearly from the inside. You are not who you were at 20 or 30 or 40. The person lying in this bed tonight has been made and remade many times, by experience, by loss, by love, by failure, by success, by time and by choice, and by the steady accumulation of everything that has ever happened to you. Think about how you've changed, not the surface changes, not the physical ones, though those are real and carry their own meaning, but the deeper changes, the shifts in what you value, the evolution of what frightens you and what no longer does. The things you used to need desperately that you've since released. The things you once dismissed that you've come to understand are essential. You are more patient than you were. Most people are by this stage. The urgency of youth, that constant sense that everything must happen now, has softened into something wiser. You understand that most things take the time they take, that rushing rarely improves anything, that the ability to wait, to sit with something unresolved, to trust that clarity will come, is actually a form of strength rather than weakness. You are more forgiving than you were, not because the offenses were smaller. Some of them were significant, but because you've lived long enough to understand that hurt people, that almost no one causes pain from a position of wholeness, that the people who wounded you were usually carrying wounds of their own that they didn't know how to hold. This understanding doesn't excuse what happened, but it changes the weight of it. It releases something. It frees up space inside you that bitterness had been occupying. You are more comfortable with uncertainty than you were. This took a long time. You spent years trying to know things for certain, trying to plan, to predict, to control outcomes that were never fully in your hands. You learned, through enough experiences of the unpredictable, that certainty was always a kind of story you were telling yourself, that the ground was always shifting beneath your feet whether you acknowledged it or not. And somewhere along the way you stopped needing it to be otherwise. You learned to walk on uncertain ground without needing it to feel solid. These changes are achievements, real ones, more significant than most of the external accomplishments you could list. The internal work of becoming wiser, more patient, more honest with yourself. That is the work of a lifetime. And you've been doing it quietly without applause for decades. The inventory holds all of this. The person you've become, the becoming itself. You've lost things. This entry in the inventory is unavoidable and necessary, and it deserves to be written with honesty and care. You've lost people, the ones who died, the specific, irreplaceable people who knew you in ways no one else did, who carried memories of you that exist nowhere else, whose absence left a shape in your life that nothing has quite filled and nothing ever will, because nothing is supposed to. The shape of their absence is the shape of their importance. You've stood at gravesides. You've sat in hospitals. You've received phone calls in the middle of the night that changed everything. You've watched people diminish slowly and others disappear suddenly, and both kinds of loss were devastating in their own particular way. Grief is part of the inventory, a substantial part, because you loved substantially. You loved people who were mortal, which all people are, and so you experienced the cost of that love when time ran out. This is not a failure. This is the direct consequence of having loved well and truly. You cannot have one without eventually having the other. You've also lost versions of yourself. The young body that could do things this body no longer can. The certainty of someone just starting out, who still believed that the future would look exactly as imagined, the particular kind of hope that only exists before certain disappointments arrive. These losses are real too, even if they're quieter than the loss of people. But loss is only part of the inventory, and tonight, in this quiet accounting, it needs to be placed in its proper proportion. Not minimized, not avoided, but also not allowed to crowd out everything else, because you've also gained enormously, in ways that only become visible from here, from this vantage point, from this particular angle of a life more than half lived. You have perspective now that was impossible to have earlier. This is one of the genuine gifts of a long life, and it deserves to be named as such. You can look back at events that once seemed catastrophic and see them differently. The job you lost that led to the opportunity that led to the decade of work that actually mattered. The relationship that ended in devastation and taught you more about yourself than years of comfort ever would have. The plan that fell through and forced you in a direction you would never have chosen, but that turned out to contain things you couldn't have imagined wanting. You can see the pattern now. Not perfectly, not completely, but enough. Enough to understand that very few of the worst things that happened to you were simply losses with no other dimension. Most of them were also redirections, clarifications, removals of things that were holding you back from something better, even when you couldn't see what that better thing was yet. This is wisdom, real wisdom, the kind that cannot be borrowed or taught or learned from books, the kind that can only be grown from the inside through enough time and enough experience and enough willingness to keep paying attention, even when paying attention is painful. You are wiser tonight than you have ever been. Lie with that for a moment. Let it settle. The person in this bed right now is the wisest version of you that has ever existed. Everything you've been through, everything you've learned, every revision of your understanding, every moment of clarity that cost you something to arrive at, all of it lives in you now. All of it is available to you in this moment. That is not a small thing. That is an extraordinary accumulation of human understanding. Earned the only way it can be earned, by living. The first section of your inventory is drawing to a close now, but it's not complete, not nearly. There are more entries to read, more of your life still waiting to be acknowledged, more of who you are and what you've carried and what you've built and what you've survived still waiting to be seen. But for now, simply rest with what's been opened. Let the early entries settle. Let the memories find their proper places. Let the understanding that your life has been real and substantial and worthy of this careful accounting begin to take hold in your chest like warmth. You've lived fully, imperfectly, courageously, and the night is holding all of it gently, without judgment, without urgency. We're not finished yet, but we're here. And that is enough for now. Rest quietly. Let your breathing slow. Let your body sink a little deeper into the bed. The second half of your inventory is waiting, and it will find you when you're ready. And so the inventory continues. You're still here, still breathing, still lying in the quiet that belongs entirely to you in these late hours. The first half of your life's accounting has settled around you like familiar furniture in a darkened room. You know where everything is. You can feel its weight and shape without needing to see it clearly. Now the ledger opens again, and what remains to be counted is no less important than what came before. In some ways, it is more important, because what remains is the part of the inventory that only becomes possible from exactly where you are right now, from this vantage point, from this particular depth of lived experience, from the quiet authority of someone who has genuinely been through something. So breathe slowly, let your body remain soft against the mattress, and allow the second half of this accounting to find you gently, the way understanding always arrives at night. Not with noise, not with urgency, but with the patient certainty of something that has been waiting for exactly this moment to be seen. You have regrets. Let's begin here, because the inventory would be dishonest without them. You have things you wish you'd done differently, words you wish you'd said before the chance closed, words you wish you'd swallowed instead of letting them damage something that mattered, decisions that looked reasonable at the time and only revealed their true cost years later when reversing them was no longer possible. You've carried these regrets for a long time, some of them so long they've become part of the furniture of your inner life, so familiar you barely notice them anymore except on nights like this one, when the quiet makes everything audible again. There are the ones about people, the relationships you let slip through neglect rather than intention, the friendships that needed tending and didn't get it because life was busy and you assumed there would be more time. The apologies you meant to give but kept delaying until the window quietly closed. The love you felt but didn't say out loud because you were waiting for a better moment that never arrived. You wish you had said it more. The love, simply said it more often, more directly, without waiting for the perfect occasion. You understand now that ordinary Tuesday afternoons were the perfect occasions. That love expressed in unremarkable moments is not diminished by the lack of ceremony. That the people you loved deserve to hear it more than they did, and that some of them are gone now without having heard it enough. This is a tender place in the inventory. Sit with it gently, not with self-punishment, not with a harsh retrospective judgment that turns regret into cruelty aimed inward, but with honest acknowledgement. You could have said it more. You know that now. And that knowledge is itself a kind of love, a belated honoring of what mattered. There are the regrets about yourself, the years you spent diminishing your own worth, apologizing for taking up space, shrinking your ambitions to fit what seemed safer, choosing the version of yourself that others found more comfortable rather than the version that was most true. You gave too much of your own authority away to other people's opinions. You let voices from outside carry more weight than the quiet voice inside that often knew better. You spent time being afraid that wasn't necessary, worried about things that never materialized, anxious about futures that arrived differently than you'd imagined, which means all that worry was borrowed suffering paid in advance for events that either didn't happen or that you survived anyway. But here is what you need to understand about your regrets, truly understand in a way that changes their weight. They are proof that you cared. Every regret in your ledger is a record of something that mattered to you. You cannot regret being careless with something you were indifferent about. The very fact that these things still ache means they were real to you, meant something to you, had genuine value in your life. Your regrets are not a verdict on your character. They are evidence of your depth. They prove that you were paying enough attention to know the difference between what you did and what you wished you'd done. That awareness itself is not nothing. That awareness is the beginning of wisdom. Place the regrets in the inventory carefully, not at the center, not as the defining entries, but honestly with their proper weight. They are part of the full accounting, and a life without them would not have been a full life. It would have been a life of insufficient caring. Now turn towards something the inventory rarely gets to examine honestly. The ordinary days. Not the landmark moments, not the births and deaths and weddings and crises that announce themselves as significant, but the ordinary days, the Tuesdays, the unremarkable Saturdays, the weeks that passed without a single event worth circling on a calendar. Those days made up the majority of your life. The actual substance of your existence was not the high drama. It was the morning coffee and the commute and the dinner table and the television program and the conversation about nothing in particular and the small domestic rituals that repeated so reliably you stopped noticing them entirely. You probably undervalued those days when you were living them. Most people do. They felt like the space between real events, like the connective tissue rather than the muscle, like filler. They were not filler, they were the life itself. The ordinary Tuesday when you sat across the table from someone you loved and talked about something inconsequential and laughed at something small. That was it. That was the thing. That was the actual substance of a shared life. Not the grand gestures, not the milestone occasions, but that Tuesday, that laugh, that moment of easy, unremarkable togetherness. The ordinary afternoon when you walked somewhere without a specific destination and noticed the quality of the light and felt, for a few minutes, completely present in your own existence, not working toward anything, not recovering from anything. Just alive and moving through the world and aware of being alive and moving. That afternoon belongs in the inventory. It was not nothing. It was everything. The ordinary evening when you were tired but content. When the day had been long and unremarkable, but you'd done what needed doing and nothing terrible had happened, and the people you loved were accounted for, and you felt without drama, simply okay. Simply here, simply enough. Those evenings were the texture of a good life, not the peaks. The texture, the steady, unheroic, uninstagrammable reality of a human being living with reasonable decency through ordinary time. Give the ordinary days their proper place in the inventory. They deserve it. You lived them. You showed up for them. You were present in them even when they didn't feel like they required presence. They added up to something enormous. They added up to most of your life, and most of your life was on balance more good than you gave it credit for while you were living it. You took care of your body, imperfectly, inconsistently, sometimes with more discipline than others, and sometimes with outright neglect. But you did the work of maintaining a physical existence through decades of wear. You fed yourself. You healed when you were sick. You pushed yourself when pushing was needed and rested when resting was the only option. Your body has carried you through everything. Every experience in the inventory was lived in this body. Every joy felt in this specific physical form. Every loss endured through these nerves and this tissue and this particular architecture of bone and muscle. You may have complicated feelings about your body. Most people do, especially by this stage of life. It has changed in ways you didn't choose. It has limitations now that feel like betrayals. It requires more maintenance than it once did, and delivers less in return for that maintenance, or so it seems on the difficult days. But think about what this body has actually done, the distances it has traveled, the work it has performed, the children it may have carried or held or chased through rooms, the hands it has shaken and the hands it has held, and the hands it has let go of when letting go was the only remaining act of love available. The meals it has cooked and eaten, the seasons it has moved through, the beds it has lain in, the floors it has stood on in hundreds of different rooms in the course of a lifetime of moving through the world. This body kept you alive through every difficult year, through every illness, through every grief that felt like it might actually stop the heart, through every morning when getting up felt like more than you had the strength for, and yet you got up. The body did that. Not always gracefully, not always without complaint, but it did it. Day after day for decades it carried you forward into another day. That deserves acknowledgement in the inventory, not as vanity, not as health obsession, but as simple gratitude for the physical form through which your entire life has been lived and felt and known. You contributed something to the world. This entry matters more than you probably believe it does. You may not have your name on anything lasting. You may not have built institutions or won awards or appeared in histories, but you contributed. You added to the world rather than simply taking from it. You left things better, in small ways, in the specific places and relationships where your life touched the larger fabric of human existence. Think about the times you helped someone without being asked, when you noticed that someone needed something and simply provided it, without calculation, without keeping score, without needing to be thanked. Those moments of unrequested generosity are among the purest entries in the inventory. They were you at your best. They were you acting from the part of yourself that exists beyond self-interest. Think about the times you told the truth when a comfortable lie was available, when you chose honesty, even knowing it would create difficulty because you understood that the relationship or the situation deserved truth more than it deserved comfort. Integrity maintained in the face of easier options is a real accomplishment. It belongs in the accounting. Think about the times you changed your mind, when new information arrived and you allowed it to revise what you'd believed, even if the revision was uncomfortable, even if it meant acknowledging that you'd been wrong. The willingness to update, to grow, to hold your own convictions loosely enough to improve them. This is a form of intellectual courage that the world does not celebrate enough, but that matters enormously in the actual living of a decent life. Think about what you modeled for younger people simply by living the way you lived. Children and younger adults absorb the atmosphere created by the adults around them. They learn what a life looks like from watching lives being lived. Whatever you demonstrated about how to face difficulty, how to treat other people, how to find meaning in ordinary work, how to love imperfectly but genuinely, those demonstrations had effects that you cannot trace, but that are real nonetheless. You were someone's example of how a person can be. That is a contribution. The inventory holds all of this. The unrequested kindnesses, the maintained integrity, the revised beliefs, the quiet modeling of something worth emulating. You gave to the world, not dramatically perhaps, but genuinely. And genuinely is the only kind that actually counts. There are things you never finished, places you didn't go, books left unread, conversations never started, versions of yourself that were gestured toward but never fully inhabited. The inventory is honest enough to include these: the unlived portions, the roads not taken in the most literal sense, the dreams that arrived with genuine energy and then quietly faded because life was moving in other directions and there wasn't room for everything. You had more inside you than any single life could fully express. This is true of almost everyone, but it is especially true of people who have lived long enough to accumulate real depth. You contain more than you've had the chance to become, more than you've been seen to be, more than even the people closest to you fully know. There are interests you never developed, talents that were pointed toward but never cultivated, places your imagination went that your physical life never followed. There's a you that might have been in different circumstances with different choices or different chances, and that shadow self is part of the inventory too, not as a source of grief, but as a reminder of the fullness of your interior life, of how much is in there, of how wide the territory of you actually is. You are larger than your biography. Your lived life is a single path through an enormous landscape. The landscape is all yours, every corner of it, even the parts you never walked into. They were always available to you. They were always part of the territory, and they are part of the inventory of who you are, even the parts that remain potential rather than actual. This is not a reason for sadness. It is a reason for wonder. You were always more than what circumstances allowed you to show. That interior richness, that depth of self that exceeded what any life could fully express, is one of the most human things about you. Honor it tonight. Let it be seen in the quiet of this accounting. The inventory must include the things you survived that you didn't think you would survive. There were moments, probably more than one, when you genuinely didn't know how you were going to continue. When the loss or the fear or the pain or the exhaustion was so complete that continuing felt like a request your body and spirit simply could not fulfill. And yet you continued. You may not give yourself credit for this. You may frame it as simply what happened, as the passage of time doing its work regardless of your participation. But that's not what it was. You made choices, small daily choices, to keep going, to get up, to eat, to speak to people, to allow help when it was offered, to trust against the evidence of your worst moments that the ground would eventually steady beneath you again. Those choices were acts of courage, unwitnessed, uncelebrated, performed in private during the hardest passages of your life. Nobody gave you an award for surviving your worst year. Nobody acknowledged the specific heroism of getting through a particular loss while still managing to function, still managing to show up for others, still managing to find small reasons to remain present in a life that temporarily felt unlivable. but the inventory acknowledges it. Right here, in this quiet accounting, your survival is named as what it actually was: brave, difficult, genuinely hard won. You did not break. You bent, sometimes dramatically, sometimes in ways that changed your shape permanently, but you did not break. And the fact that you're here tonight, lying in this bed, taking this inventory, is the evidence. You are the proof of your own resilience. You made it through everything that tried to stop you. Every single time. That belongs at the center of the inventory, not the losses, not the regrets, not the unlived portions, but this. You survived. You kept going. You are still here. Now gently, the inventory turns toward what remains, not with anxiety, not with the urgency of someone who has run out of time, but with the quiet openness of someone who understands that what remains is still real and still theirs and still worth tending. You have mornings left. Not infinite mornings, no one has those, but mornings. The particular quality of early light coming through a familiar window. Coffee or tea or simply water in the first quiet hour before the day begins its demands. The small daily miracle of waking up again and finding the world still there, still turning, still offering the ordinary gift of another ordinary day. You have conversations left with people who know you, with people who are still learning you, with your own interior, which grows richer and more interesting the longer you inhabit it. The conversations that haven't happened yet may contain some of the most meaningful exchanges of your life. People surprise you. You surprise yourself. The future is not merely repetition. You have the capacity for wonder. This is one of the things that aging, at its best, preserves rather than erodes. The ability to be moved by things, by beauty, by kindness encountered unexpectedly, by the particular dignity of other human beings going about the difficult business of being alive, by nature doing what nature does without asking for an audience, by music or light or the face of someone you love catching you in an unguarded moment. Wonder is not a young person's possession. It belongs equally to everyone willing to remain open to it. And you have remained open. The inventory proves it. The fact that you're here, listening, reflecting, taking account of a full life with honesty and care, that is the act of someone who has not closed, who is still present, still willing, still here. The inventory is nearly complete now. But there is one final entry, the most important one, the one that makes sense of everything else. You mattered, not in the ways the world measures mattering, not by the metrics of achievement or accumulation or recognition or legacy as the world typically defines it, but in the ways that are real, in the ways that leave actual marks on actual people, in the actual fabric of the world. You mattered to specific people in specific, unrepeatable ways. There are people whose lives are genuinely different because you were in them. People who are more themselves because of something you said or did, or simply were in their presence. People who learn something about love or courage or honesty or endurance from watching you live your life without ever telling you that they were watching, without ever knowing themselves how much they were absorbing. You change the temperature of rooms simply by entering them. You shifted the quality of days by being present in them. You made things better in your particular way, in the particular spaces your life moved through. This effect cannot be measured. It cannot be pointed to or catalogued, but it is as real as anything in the inventory. more real than most of it, and you existed fully as yourself, with your specific combination of gifts and limitations and experiences and perspectives that no one else in the history of the world has ever had or ever will have in exactly the same configuration. You were an original, entirely unrepeatable. There was only ever one of you, moving through time, touching other lives, accumulating this particular ledger of experience that no one else could have accumulated. That is not nothing. That is extraordinary. That is the most extraordinary thing there is. The inventory is complete. Not because everything has been counted. A full life resists complete counting, but because enough has been seen, enough has been acknowledged, enough has been named and honored and placed with care into the ledger of what this life of yours actually contains. And what it contains is enough, more than enough. A life of love and loss and work and change and regret and resilience and ordinary Tuesdays and extraordinary moments of being alive and aware and present in the world. A life of becoming and surviving and showing up and trying again. A life that was genuinely, fully, unreservedly yours. The inventory settles now. The ledger closes gently, not because the life is over, but because tonight's accounting is complete. Because you have done the work of seeing yourself clearly and honestly, and with the compassion you deserve. Because the quiet has held all of this without judgment and without urgency and without asking for anything in return. You can rest now. You have earned rest in every sense of that word, not just tonight's rest, though that too, but the deeper rest that comes from having lived honestly, from having loved genuinely, from having survived what needed surviving and learned what was available to be learned and become through all of it, someone worth being. Your body is heavy now, pleasantly, completely heavy. Every part of you is ready to release the day, release the inventory, release the effort of remembering and understanding and accounting. The pillow is soft beneath your head. The darkness is gentle around you. The night is doing what night does best, simply holding you, simply offering this quiet space where you don't have to be anything or do anything or become anything. You have already become. The becoming is complete enough for tonight, and what you have become is here in this bed, breathing slowly, settling into rest, carrying a full life gently into the dark. Let your eyes remain closed. Let your thoughts slow their movement, the way water slows when it reaches a wide and quiet place. Let the inventory dissolve back into the living that created it. Let all those entries, all those memories and regrets and loves and survivals become simply the warm background of who you are. Not loud, not demanding, simply present, simply yours. You are enough. This bears repeating in the final moments of the inventory, because it is the truth that everything else in the ledger points toward. The child you were was enough. The young person figuring things out was enough. The adult making impossible choices was enough. The person who failed and tried again was enough. The one who loved imperfectly but genuinely was enough. The one who survived the unsurvivable was enough. And you, right now, in this bed, in this body, in this life that has been fully and honestly lived, you are enough, completely, without revision, without condition, without needing one more accomplishment or one more correction or one more chance to do it differently. You are enough. Tonight, as you are, as you have always been, underneath everything. The fires die down, the stories settle, and the world grows still. Let your thoughts drift away like embers on the wind. Good night. You've journeyed far through time tonight. Now it's time to journey into dreams. Close your eyes, breathe, and let sleep find you.